I'm here today to talk to you about the 5 keys to a successful podcast. We all have our favorite podcasts, but what makes them our favorite podcasts? What keeps us coming back for more? So I've come up with 5 keys. The first one is you need to know your audience. You need to know who's listening so that you can cater your podcast to those people. If you're going to talk about, I don't know, Common Core and standards and benchmarks of teaching to middle school students, they're not going to listen. But if you talk about what's going on at school or interview your teachers and students and talk about the latest events that happened at school, they're going to listen. So give them what they want. And you need to entertain them and leave them wanting more. My favorite podcast, every time they finish, I'm upset that they finished because I want to keep listening and I can't wait till the next week when the next podcast comes out. The second one is you need to plan your podcast. Every good podcast is planned meticulously right down to almost a script. But the key is not to make it seem like it's planned right down to the script. A really good podcast has interesting and new and creative ideas. So, what you need to do is come up with all of these ideas for your podcast, crazy ideas that might not even work, but from this list, you're going to choose the best ones. And how you ask the people who are going to be listening. Ask middle school students, would you be interested in hearing this? Do you think this is a great idea? Have a reoccurring bits or games. One of my favorite podcasts is the Jay and Dan podcast, and these are two sports commentators from Canada, and now they work for Fox Sports, and they have a podcast. They don't even really talk about sports; they just talk about what's going on in their lives and interview people. But I love it because they just have this really good bond, or it's just really interesting. And here's an example of their bit, Rapid Fire.
It's time to have some fun, Dan. We're going to play our favorite game on the podcast. It's called Rapid Fire.
Rapid Fire.
Mike is going to read you questions sent in from our Twitter followers, and you answer them as you feel.
By the way,
so that is just an example that their Twitter followers ask questions. They tell who the guest is going to be a couple days in advance, and these Twitter followers, they ask questions, and they read the questions to the person, and they're really quick questions like, if you were to start one hockey team now, what player would you start with? I don't know, Sidney Crosby, something really quick. Your plan guides you, but it must not seem as though you're following a script. Another one of my favorite podcasts is Serial, and they talk about a murder case, and they go into the court details and things like that. And I know that the person, Sarah, who runs the podcast, she's reading from a script that she wrote. However, it's so natural that it doesn't seem like she's actually reading from a script. Have guests on this podcast, have prizes, have like a Hall of Fame, have certain awards per week. Just something that people can kind of predict and look forward to. It's all in the sound. Choose a good microphone and record in a soundproof room. Nobody likes background music right now or noise. Right now, I'm recording in my classroom and I can hear kids screaming in the background. Or outside, I can hear people in the hallways. Nobody likes hearing background noise. Record on. We have a snowball microphone that we can get from the EdTech room to record on. But you need a soundproof room, and it could be as easy as just putting blankets up around you to absorb noise, the background noise, and your voice so it sounds proper. Another good place, people say that the best place to record a podcast, if you don't have a recording studio, is in a car. So come up with a soundproof room. Create a theme music or jingles or sound bites that you use every week with your podcast so people can kind of get adopted to it and it becomes yours. So here is...
Welcome to Stuff You Should Know from HowStuffWorks.com.
Hey, and welcome to the podcast. I'm Josh Clark. There's Charles W. Chuck Bryant. There's Jerry. And this is Stuff You Should Know.
So that's another one of my favorite podcasts, Stuff You Should Know, and they have that jingle that comes out, and they start every podcast with that, and they end the podcast with the same jingle. And it just wraps it up all nicely. Edit. Use GarageBand. We have access to GarageBand. You guys all know how to do that by now. So you need to edit the podcast. Get your audience involved. Nowadays, everybody has access to each other. There's social media. You can ask questions right on the spot. In real time. So use Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, any social media device that you can think of to get your audience involved. They could ask questions. They can comment and give you suggestions. So we have access to this, and why not use it? So you need to give your audience an active voice. The more people involved, or the more people that you listen to, the more people that listen to you. So right now you can hear an airplane in the background. Not the ideal recording area. Be everywhere. Post your podcast in as many podcatchers as possible. You can use iTunes, podcast.com, Podcast Alley, SoundCloud, KRS website, Podcast Bunker, Stitcher Radio. Have your podcast on as many podcatchers as possible. There's the bell, another background noise. So those are the 5 keys to a successful podcast. Hope you enjoyed.